Millionaire dines with Mistress' pregnant wife, casually sits beside them, leaving him humiliated. Picture a dimly lit, opulent restaurant draped in lush velvet curtains and flickering candlelight. At the corner table, a suave millionaire named Nicholas Hastings dines with a woman. Everyone assumes is his elegant wife until she leans closer, kisses his cheek, and reveals a blatant truth: she's his mistress. Suddenly, a pregnant woman appears, calm but heartbreakingly resolute, and takes a seat beside them without saying a word. Tension charges the air as hushed whispers echo across the room. What follows is an unforgettable story of love, betrayal, arrogance, and redemption, proving that even wealth cannot shield a person from the consequences of their actions. Nicholas Hastings was born into a modest home on the outskirts of Columbus, Ohio. His parents, Gerald and Martina Hastings, worked tirelessly. Gerald was a truck driver who was on the road more often than he was home, and Martina juggled a job as a hairdresser while raising their son. The young Nicholas, gifted with a quick mind and an insatiable hunger for success, dreamed of bigger things: twinkling skyscrapers, private jets, exotic vacations. From childhood, he believed destiny had carved a unique path for him, one that would lead far beyond his parents' humble beginnings. As soon as he could, Nicholas threw himself into every available opportunity. In high school, he spent weekends helping at the local hardware store, learning the basics of management by watching how stock was tracked and sales were made. He devoured books on entrepreneurship, business strategy, and psychology. The moment he turned 18, he was ready to leave Columbus behind and chase the American dream. College was his first stepping stone. He secured a scholarship to a small but prestigious institution that specialized in finance and marketing. His relentless ambition set him apart from the start. While peers complained about coursework, Nicholas saw each assignment as a new challenge to conquer, each networking event as a potential goldmine. By his senior year, professors spoke of him in hushed, admiring tones, predicting a meteoric rise once he graduated. Amid all this academic and professional fervor, Nicholas met Penelope, called Penny by her friends. She was a spirited literature major who believed in love stories, heartfelt poems, and the power of a gentle word. Despite coming from a well-to-do family, Penny never flaunted her wealth. Instead, she cherished simple pleasures: reading by the campus lake, volunteering at the animal shelter, baking cookies for tired students during finals. Her wide, empathetic eyes and genuine laugh drew Nicholas in. Though ambitious, he found in Penny a soft place to land, a counterpart to his sharp, goal-oriented worldview. They fell in love with the heady rush unique to the young and fearless. While Nicholas poured his time into internships at top corporations and building his personal network, Penny wrote short stories in her cramped dorm room, dreaming of one day becoming a published novelist. Their worlds, so different in scope, melded into a perfect yin and yang. After graduation, Nicholas launched straight into the corporate fast lane, joining a prestigious investment bank that soon discovered his knack for sniffing out profitable ventures. Promotions flew his way faster than he could update his resume. Penny, meanwhile, started building a quiet reputation, writing articles for small publications and working part-time at the local library. Their modest early days as a married couple were spent in a tiny apartment with second-hand furniture, but they brimmed with hope. Nicholas believed they were on the threshold of something extraordinary. Penny believed in the love that bound them through every challenge. When Nicholas's keen eye spotted a trend in the emergent tech startup sphere, everything changed. He leveraged every contact, called in every favor, and poured all his earnings into one major investment that skyrocketed within 18 months. Overnight, he became something of a legend in insider circles. He was the wonderkind who had doubled, then tripled his capital, Suddenly, the Hastings name appeared in magazines and online articles. Powerful clients wanted in on whatever Nicholas touched next. Of course, with money came demands. Nicholas's schedule filled to the brim with meetings, conferences, gala dinners, and more. Penny watched from the sidelines, supportive yet uncertain. She knew her husband was on the cusp of a new life, an elevated status filled with endless travel, fleeting acquaintances, and deals sealed over cocktails. But she trusted him wholeheartedly, believing their love was untouchable. One autumn evening, after a particularly successful trade negotiation, Nicholas proposed an impromptu dinner to celebrate. They found a rooftop restaurant with a breathtaking view of the city lights. As they danced under the stars, he told Penny, "Our life is going to be brilliant, shining brighter than these lights." He wasn't wrong. Over the next few years, Nicholas's name became synonymous with success. Offers poured in for partnerships, high-paying contracts, appearances at exclusive events. Their small apartment was replaced by a chic penthouse with floor-to-ceiling windows, marble floors, and a private elevator. Penny adapted, quietly focusing on her own writing projects, occasionally traveling with Nicholas, sometimes staying home to work on her stories in peace. Yet even as Penny's belly began to swell with pregnancy, her dream of motherhood taking form, Nicholas's eyes started to wander. The lavish parties introduced him to countless women, enthralled by his charisma and wealth. Penny's unassuming presence and growing bump, once so cherished, started fading into the backdrop of Nicholas's life. And that was where the seeds of betrayal were sown. No one would have guessed that the easy-going, graceful Penny would soon find herself enduring the ultimate humiliation. No one would have thought that on one fateful evening she'd walk into a five-star restaurant and casually sit beside her cheating husband and his mistress. But sometimes life deals us cards we never saw coming, and the tragedy often begins in the smallest cracks we choose to ignore. As Nicholas ascended the ladder of success, his social circle expanded exponentially. He brushed shoulders with CEOs, fashion models, and international celebrities. People clamored to have him on their boards or at their fundraisers. Photographers sought his presence, capturing images of him in tailored suits that wound up on glossy magazines, further fueling his growing brand. Penny felt like a relic of Nicholas's old life, a sweet reminder of simpler times, but increasingly overshadowed by the bright lights of fame. She tried to stay involved, but the truth was simple. The more money Nicholas made, the less time he had for her. Their once intimate evenings were replaced by endless business dinners. Their weekend getaways gave way to high-powered networking events. The baby in her womb, so precious to Penny, seemed less a source of joy to Nicholas and more an inconvenient complication that forced him to juggle fatherhood with an already packed schedule. In these swirling new social circles, Nicholas met a variety of intriguing personalities. One in particular stood out, Isabella Morgan. She was a stunning woman with raven black hair, sharp cheekbones, and an aura of quiet confidence. She worked in public relations and had a reputation for turning struggling brands into overnight sensations. Initially, Nicholas admired her from a distance, impressed by her ability to charm a room. She was equally curious about him, the ambitious young millionaire rumored to have the Midas touch. They first crossed paths at a high-profile charity gala in Chicago. Penny was supposed to attend, but morning sickness had gotten the better of her. Determined not to miss another prime networking occasion, Nicholas flew solo. He spotted Isabella by the champagne fountain, clad in a sleek black gown that highlighted her statuesque figure. Their introduction was pleasant, professional, strictly business, or so Nicholas told himself. Isabella proposed they collaborate on a new project to market Nicholas's next investment fund launch. As they exchanged contact information, an unspoken tension crackled between them. Over the next few weeks, Nicholas convinced himself their growing rapport was purely strategic. Their dinners were to discuss proposals, their text messages about brand strategies. Yet the times he found himself admiring the way Isabella laughed, or how her eyes sparkled under the restaurant's ambient light, were becoming too frequent to dismiss. He was like a moth dancing dangerously close to a flame. Meanwhile, Penny continued her pregnancy journey mostly alone. She had doctor's appointments to attend, nursery designs to finalize, and baby name lists to compile. Nicholas would nod or offer fleeting smiles whenever she brought up these topics, but the emotional engagement she longed for was absent. Sometimes, Penny questioned her own anxious instincts, but she reminded herself that Nicholas was under immense pressure. The corporate world was brutal, especially for someone who was always in the spotlight. She tried not to take it personally, but beneath her calm exterior, a nagging worry grew. If Nicholas couldn't slow down for her now, would he be there when the baby arrived? Penny kept her hope alive by focusing on writing and preparing for motherhood. She poured her heart into a new manuscript, a poignant tale about a woman grappling with betrayal and forgiveness. It was the catharsis she needed, an attempt to process unspoken fears. In rare, quiet moments, she'd imagine a future where Nicholas found balance, returned to her side, and cherished their child as much as she did. But as the days passed, his calls became briefer, his tone more distant. The name Isabella started popping up in conversation, more often always in a professional context. Yet Penny sensed there was more beneath the surface. One evening, just as Penny was drifting off to sleep, Nicholas slipped into the penthouse and sat at the edge of the bed. His shirt smelled faintly of perfume, one she didn't recognize. She dared not comment, swallowing the lump in her throat. Though her eyes were closed, her mind was racing. Did he still love her the same way? Why didn't he come home earlier? Had she grown so accustomed to ignoring signs that she'd become complicit in her own heartbreak? When Penny finally mustered the courage to confront him, Nicholas brushed off her concerns, attributing it all to stress. He kissed her forehead with practiced tenderness and told her to rest. As she drifted into an uneasy sleep, Penny resolved to trust him for now. She wanted to believe that he was telling the truth, that the swirl of tension around them was a temporary gale, one that would eventually pass. But trust can be a slippery thing once doubts start to take root. Unbeknownst to Penny, Nicholas's attraction to Isabella grew daily. The texts turned flirtatious. Business dinners morphed into late-night cocktails. Soon the line that separated professional colleague from intimate companion was hopelessly blurred, and the gravitational pull of desire was too potent for Nicholas to resist. By the time Penny was 7 months pregnant, Nicholas found himself ensnared in an affair. He was too proud or too foolish to end. Despite the love he once held for Penny, the allure of Isabella's attention, her glamour, her willingness to indulge his every whim, these felt intoxicating, a rush that momentarily eclipsed his guilt. Though he performed his role as the supportive husband in front of friends and family, an insidious wedge had been driven into his marriage, a wedge that would inevitably lead to the fateful night when Penny, with her belly full of life, would make the choice to shatter his illusions in front of everyone. Nicholas's life now existed in two disjointed realms. In one realm, he was the accomplished entrepreneur, beloved by the public for his rags-to-riches story. Cameras followed him, journalists wrote glowing features, and philanthropic organizations lauded his charitable donations. He played this role flawlessly, complete with the adoring wife, Penny, who would accompany him to select events when her pregnancy allowed. In the other realm, one hidden behind closed doors, Nicholas indulged in midnight phone calls, stolen weekends, and secret dinners with Isabella. Their relationship was fueled by the thrill of deception and the raw excitement of doing something forbidden. For Isabella, the allure of being the mistress to an immensely wealthy man was irresistibly seductive. The gifts Nicholas showered upon her jewelry, haute couture dresses, extravagant travels came with the unspoken agreement that she remained discreet. Isabella, pragmatic and hungry for her own share of success, agreed to these terms. After all, she believed she had the upper hand in capturing Nicholas's heart. If he'd left his modest roots behind, why wouldn't he eventually leave Penny as well? The dual life weighed on Nicholas far more than he let on. He still maintained a sliver of attachment to Penny. She was his wife, the mother of his soon-to-be-born child, and a comforting figure from a simpler time. Guilt occasionally gnawed at him, especially when he glanced at Penny's growing belly or caught her quietly writing in her journal. She wore exhaustion on her face, but she never complained, and that silent endurance only magnified his shame. But rather than confront his own misdeeds, he fed his ego's bottomless pit with Isabella's attention and the applause of the outside world. To sustain his secrets, Nicholas developed an elaborate schedule. He'd claim to have urgent business trips that demanded overnight stays. He'd notify Penny that last-minute client demands required late-night brainstorming sessions. In reality, he'd whisk Isabella to lavish penthouse suites in different cities or even private resorts out of town. He made sure to send Penny thoughtful gifts, flowers, or letters timed to arrive whenever he was with Isabella. It was a twisted dance of placating guilt while chasing pleasure. Penny's friends began to notice her sadness, though she did her best to keep a brave face. One of her closest confidants was Michelle Thompson, a fellow writer and colleague at a small publishing firm. Michelle had visited the penthouse multiple times, aware of the growing distance between Penny and Nicholas. Though Penny never explicitly disclosed Nicholas's affair, she had no hard proof Michelle suspected it. She saw how Penny's laughter grew more subdued, how a flicker of pain crossed her face. Whenever Nicholas's name came up, Michelle encouraged Penny to open up, to see a counselor, to confront her husband if necessary. But Penny, still clinging to hope, kept insisting she was just stressed about the baby and her own writing deadlines. Her denial unraveled one fateful afternoon. Penny, searching for an old manuscript on Nicholas's laptop, found an open tab with a hotel reservation. The date on the reservation matched the night he claimed to be on a business trip. The suite was clearly booked for 2 people, complete with a spa package and a romantic dinner for 2. When Penny confronted him, Nicholas repeated his default excuse. It was a work thing for my client, but the details on the confirmation email told a different story. The spa appointments were in the name of Isabella Morgan. Still, Penny said nothing. She had no energy for confrontation, no desire to stage a dramatic fight when she was just weeks away from her due date. However, her course of action shifted. She began quietly gathering evidence, noting discrepancies in his schedule, double-checking receipts for dinners and trips. Her fear and heartbreak crystallized into a calm resolve. If Nicholas wouldn't come clean, she'd have to address the truth on her own terms. And so Penny planned. She learned of an exclusive dinner that Nicholas would attend with Isabella under the guise of finalizing a business merger. Everyone who was anyone in the local elite would be there. She also discovered a seat had been reserved for him under his official name, Mr. Hastings, accompanied by Miss Morgan. Penny waited silently, biding her time, letting Nicholas believe she was completely in the dark. She could have exploded with rage or threatened to leave, but she chose a different path, one that promised a dramatic showdown neither Nicholas nor Isabella would ever forget. The day before the dinner, Penny decided to meet with her obstetrician, Dr. Natalie Reese, for a routine checkup. The tension swirling around her had grown so suffocating that she worried about its impact on the baby. Dr. Reese was a kind woman with gentle eyes that held more empathy than words could express. She noticed Penny's stress immediately. "Everything seems fine with the baby," Dr. Reese assured her, "but you need to take care of yourself." Emotional stress has ways of affecting both your body and mind that aren't immediately visible. Penny nodded, tears pricking her eyes, yet she held them back, not wanting to appear weak. After the appointment, she found herself sitting in her car for nearly half an hour, hands trembling on the steering wheel. She wanted to scream, to cry out for help. She wanted to run away from the lavish penthouse that felt more like a lonely castle every day. But something in her refused to be swallowed by despair. The baby kicked inside her, a gentle reminder she wasn't alone in her decisions. She had a life inside her, a life that depended on her courage and stability. When she returned home, Nicholas was in his office, typing away at his computer. He barely looked up when she passed by. The ring on her finger felt cold. She recalled how he had slipped it on her hand on their wedding day, his vows echoing with sincerity, "I promise to love and cherish you for the rest of my days." Now those words rang hollow in her memory. Quietly, she entered the nursery she had so painstakingly decorated. Pale yellow walls, a white crib with a mobile of little stars and moons, and shelves lined with children's books. The sight simultaneously comforted and saddened her. This was supposed to be a new chapter in their marriage, a celebration of their love. Instead, the sweet lullaby of motherhood was competing with the relentless tempo of betrayal. That evening, Nicholas announced he'd be attending a critical client dinner the next night. Penny feigned surprise, asking if he wanted her to join. He quickly dismissed the idea, lying that it was a closed-door negotiation, not a social affair. Penny just smiled. If he noticed the flicker in her eyes, he didn't comment. He was too absorbed in his own web of deceit, too accustomed to having everything run on his terms. Meanwhile, Isabella was preparing as well. She tried on several designer dresses, deciding which would make her look the most striking at Nicholas's side. Part of her relished the idea of flaunting their relationship in front of other influential couples, stepping into the spotlight as Nicholas Hastings's partner, even if she was still technically his mistress. She was no stranger to the rumors swirling in the corporate circles. Some whispered that she was cunning, that she'd never settle for being the other woman. She intended to show them all just how formidable she could be. And so, as the day of the dinner approached, the city's well-heeled elites readied themselves for a glamorous evening. The invitation boasted an exclusive experience, a multi-course feast prepared by a Michelin-starred chef, fine wines imported from France, and a smattering of powerful business people, politicians, and celebrities mingling in a private lounge. Little did they know that the real show would have nothing to do with the menu or the decor. It would be about a pregnant wife, a duplicitous husband, and a self-assured mistress, all converging at one table. And in the hush of that room, under the glitter of chandeliers, the truth would stand revealed for everyone to see. The evening arrived with regal flourish. Chauffeured cars lined up outside Le Majestic, the upscale French restaurant known for exclusivity and grandeur. Valets, dressed in crisp black uniforms, guided each sleek automobile to the entrance. Guests alighted, draped in designer gowns and tailored suits, dazzled by camera flashes from society reporters who had been invited to capture the prestige of the event. Inside, the decor was breathtaking. Crystal chandeliers cast a warm glow on golden wallpaper, while classical music from a live quartet wove through the laughter and clinking of champagne flutes. The aroma of truffle-infused delicacies teased the senses, promising an unforgettable culinary journey. Nicholas arrived with Isabella, perched at his side. He wore a tailored navy tuxedo, cufflinks gleaming, hair groomed to perfection. Isabella's dress was a daring shade of red, an unmistakable proclamation that she was a woman who basked in attention. Together, they turned heads as they made their entrance. Nicholas's face remained carefully poised, betraying no apprehension. He was confident Penny believed he was at a business meeting. In his mind, the path was clear: wine, dine, mingle with powerful contacts, and possibly return to Isabella's suite for a private after-party. The maître d' escorted them to an exclusive table near the large bay window that overlooked the city's glittering skyline. Within minutes, waiters appeared to pour champagne, their movements precise and silent. Nicholas held court among a small circle of influential figures, introducing Isabella as a close associate. She played her part effortlessly, charming them with subtle humor and the aura of a woman deeply entwined with Nicholas's professional and personal life. In another part of the restaurant, Penny slipped in quietly. She wore a simple, elegant black dress that draped gracefully over her growing belly. Her hair was softly pinned back, giving her a refined, almost regal air. A polite hostess recognized her, remembered her from the reservations under Nicholas's name in the past, and inquired if she'd like to be led to his table. Penny, with a calm smile, said, "Yes, please." As Penny made her way through the throng of guests, her heart thundered in her chest. She could see Nicholas from a distance. He was laughing at something, Isabella said, one arm draped casually over the back of her chair. The sight might have shattered her once, but tonight Penny was steeled by purpose. She heard gasps when people recognized her, the pregnant wife of Nicholas Hastings, obviously not on his arm this evening. Conversations hushed, eyes darted between Penny and the glamorous couple. A frisson of nervous excitement rippled across the room. Nicholas, catching the sudden shift in atmosphere, looked up. His eyes locked onto Penny's, and in that moment, time seemed to stop. Isabella, oblivious, continued smiling at the person next to her. Then she, too, followed his gaze, and the blood drained from her face. The room held its collective breath. Penny approached the table without haste, her posture erect, her expression composed. She placed one hand gently on her belly. It was as though the swirling chatter of the restaurant had fallen into a muted hush. People surreptitiously watched the unfolding drama, exchanging knowing glances and hushed whispers. When Penny reached the table, Nicholas tried to force a laugh, to maintain the facade. "Penny," he began, "what are you?" She raised a hand to silence him and then spoke quietly to a waiter. "Would you be kind enough to bring a chair for me? I'd like to sit with my husband and his associate." The waiter, uncertain but professional, complied. An extra chair was placed between Nicholas and Isabella, exactly in the intimate space they had been sharing. Nicholas's jaw clenched, but he forced a polite expression. Isabella's discomfort was evident in her stiff posture and the dart of her eyes, searching for an escape route. Guests in the vicinity openly stared now, some with pity, some with glee at the scandalous spectacle, and others with pure shock that Penny had dared to show up, pregnant and calm. Once seated, Penny turned to Nicholas. The first had no idea this meeting was so important. "Imagine my surprise when the hostess told me you'd already arrived." Nicholas fumbled for a response, but words seemed to fail him. In that moment, he comprehended the magnitude of his mistake. His wife's public presence left him no room for lies. The humiliating realization burned across his face, a wave of embarrassment he couldn't mask behind wealth or bravado. And so, under the golden lights of Le Majestique, a pregnant wife joined her unfaithful husband and his mistress at the most exclusive table in town. For all Nicholas's efforts to hide his affair, the truth was laid bare in dramatic fashion, a spectacle more riveting than any high society gossip could have manufactured. An uneasy silence enveloped the table, broken only by the subtle clink of cutlery and hushed murmurs from surrounding diners. Penny calmly folded her hands in her lap, her ring glinting under the ambient light. She regarded Isabella with measured politeness, as though greeting a new acquaintance at a casual luncheon. Isabella shifted, crossing and uncrossing her legs, desperate for composure, yet visibly flustered. Nicholas tried to regain some semblance of control. Clearing his throat, he gestured for the sommelier. "Perhaps we should order," he said, forcing a smile. "I'm sure Penny is hungry after coming all this way." His voice trembled at the edges, betraying his humiliation. Penny nodded. "Yes, let's order." Then she turned to Isabella. "I've heard wonderful things about the chef's signature truffle risotto. Perhaps you should try it." The suggestion was cordial, but an undercurrent of tension laced every syllable. Isabella mustered her charm, though it faltered under Penny's poised gaze. "I might—" "Yes," she replied, throat tight. Her typical confident allure seemed to vanish in Penny's presence. The role of the polished mistress who knew her place suddenly felt untenable in a room where the real wife commanded the spotlight. Around the table, a scattering of wealthy patrons half-heartedly resumed their own conversations, but their ears remained trained on the drama unfolding. Without a doubt, rumors of what had transpired would spread like wildfire through the upper echelons of society. Nicholas's affair had not only been exposed, it had been showcased in a fashion that guaranteed talk for weeks, if not months. Meals arrived, meticulously plated. Penny took a few bites to maintain decorum, but her appetite was non-existent. She wondered if the baby could feel the adrenaline coursing through her. Every fiber of her being was on alert. She sensed Nicholas's growing panic, Isabella's palpable dread, and the hush of judgment that weighed heavily upon them. When Penny could no longer bear the silence, she spoke softly, her voice tinged with sorrow rather than anger. "Nicholas, you've worked so hard for everything you have. I admired that about you from the start. It saddens me to see you risk it all for a moment's thrill." Nicholas glanced around, anxious about how many guests were listening. "Penny, this is neither the time nor the place," he hissed under his breath, feigning a hushed tone of admonishment. "You're right," Penny conceded, her tone unwavering. "It isn't. But since we're here, and since your associate is here, I thought I'd let you both know that I'm well aware of what's been happening." Isabella's face flushed. She couldn't decide if she should defend herself, remain silent, or flee. She had anticipated many outcomes in their relationship: long-term secrecy, eventual acceptance, maybe even Nicholas divorcing Penny. But she never imagined this swift public reckoning. Gathering her composure, Isabella took a sip of water. Her voice emerged strained. "I realize this is difficult, Penny, but you have to understand." Penny's cool gaze fell on her. "No, I don't have to understand anything," she replied. "You made your choices. So did Nicholas." Nicholas placed his trembling hand on Penny's arm, but she pulled away. The gesture spoke volumes. The dynamic had shifted. No longer was Penny the docile wife. In a matter of minutes, she had grown into a force that refused to be belittled or neglected. Diners around them pretended to focus on their own meals, but sly glances and half-smiles betrayed the collective schadenfreude. Nicholas Hastings, the golden boy of finance, had been brought low by his own hubris, right in front of the city's elite. A flicker of defiance crossed Nicholas's features. He despised feeling cornered, especially under the public gaze. "I think we should talk about this at home," he said in a stern undertone. "Certainly," Penny agreed. "You'll find your things in the guest room tonight. Until we speak, I see no reason to share a bed with a man who disrespected his vows." Isabella nearly choked on her water. She glanced at Nicholas, searching for guidance, but found only a hardened expression. Penny's words had left him at a loss. The dinner was in ruins, their reputations tarnished in a single stroke. This was a turning point that no amount of wealth or charm could undo. With the entire room watching, Penny signaled for the waiter. "Could I get a taxi, please?" she asked politely. The waiter nodded and swiftly stepped away. Nicholas made a futile attempt to salvage dignity. "I'll ride with you," he said, pushing his chair back. But Penny shook her head, voice resolute. "No. Stay with your date, Nicholas. I insist." She turned to Isabella. "Enjoy the risotto." Without another word, Penny stood. A hush fell over the crowd as she departed, her back straight, head held high. Isabella and Nicholas, left behind at the table, felt the weight of countless eyes judging their every move. In that charged silence, a clear message rang out. The millionaire husband had gambled with his marriage and lost face in the most public, humiliating way imaginable. And the once innocent wife had emerged stronger than anyone thought possible. The hostess, pity in her eyes, escorted Penny to the entrance, where a taxi idled. As Penny climbed into the back seat, she fought back tears. She had maintained her composure at the restaurant, but inside, her heart ached. The driver asked for her destination, and she gave the address of the penthouse. Her mind whirled, torn between heartbreak and an odd sense of liberation. Nicholas lingered behind at Le Majestic with Isabella, both too stunned to follow Penny immediately. Isabella leaned in, voice quavering with concern and frustration. "What are you going to do now?" she asked, searching Nicholas's face for some semblance of control. He rubbed his temple, feeling a headache ignite from the stress. "I don't know, but I can't stay here. The damage is already done." "I should," Isabella cut him off, her composure fraying. "If you leave now, it'll make this look even worse. Everyone's watching. At least pretend to salvage the evening, or your entire reputation could be on the line." Nicholas stared at her, a mix of anger and desperation fueling his every breath. "My reputation," he echoed. "It's already in tatters. Look around. They've witnessed everything. There's no point pretending anymore." But Isabella clung to the idea of carefully curated appearances. "Nicholas, you've spent your life building this empire. Don't let one scandal crush it." He slammed his palm on the table, rattling the dishes. A nearby couple jumped and then hurriedly averted their gaze. "I need to talk to Penny," he growled in a low voice. "I'm done with this charade tonight." Without waiting for a response, he threw some cash on the table, enough to cover whatever they had ordered, and then some, and stormed out. Isabella sat there momentarily, cheeks burning with shame. As she glanced around, not a single patron met her eyes. It was as though the entire room was collectively condemning her for participating in Nicholas's downfall. Gathering her handbag, she left quietly, unsure of her next move and weighed down by dread at the evening's disastrous turn. Back at the penthouse, Penny arrived to an empty residence. The hush of the marble corridors felt oppressive. She removed her heels, rubbing her swollen feet, and headed straight for the nursery. She couldn't bear to enter the master bedroom, where so many memories of her and Nicholas lingered. Instead, she settled into a rocking chair by the crib, tears flowing freely now. A half-hour later, Nicholas burst through the front door, calling her name. He found Penny in the nursery, the pale moonlight illuminating her silhouette. The tears were dried on her cheeks, leaving only a hollow expression. He tried to close the distance between them, but she held up a hand. "Don't," she whispered, "not tonight." He froze, words dying in his throat. They stayed like that for a moment, the tension tangible. Finally he tried to speak. "Penny, I'm sorry. I never meant to hurt me." She filled in the blank, her voice catching. "You think that excuse absolves what you've done?" He swallowed hard. Guilt and regret warred within him. "I messed up. I was so caught up in everything. The fame, the money, the thrill. I lost sight of us." A bitter smile ghosted across Penny's lips. "Us. You lost sight of me, your wife and the mother of your child. Do you realize how alone I've felt these past months? And I believed like a fool that you just needed time, that you were under pressure." Nicholas stepped closer, hands trembling. "I was under pressure, but that's not an excuse. I should have been here for you, and I wasn't." Penny's eyes shone with unshed tears. "I don't know if I can forgive you. Not now." He reached for her hand. She let him hold it this time, but there was no warmth in her touch. It felt more like a formality, a last vestige of what they once shared. Penny sighed, turning her gaze to the crib. "You want to make this right? Start by telling me everything. No lies, no omissions," Nicholas exhaled. "Isabella and I, we started seeing each other a few months ago. At first, it was about work, but it became more. I don't know if it was lust or some twisted sense of validation I got from her, but it doesn't change the fact that I've betrayed you." He paused, tears collecting at the corners of his eyes. "I understand if you want me to leave. I'll do whatever you ask." Penny studied him, the father of her unborn child, a man she once adored without reservation. Now she saw him in all his flawed complexity, a man undone by ambition and vanity. Her voice quivered when she finally spoke. "You'll stay, for the baby's sake, until I decide what's next. But don't expect it to be easy. You'll be in the guest room. We are not husband and wife right now. We're two people who share a future child." Nicholas nodded, shame radiating from every part of him. "I'll do whatever it takes," he whispered, though he had no idea what that entailed. For a moment, his hand grazed Penny's belly, and she allowed it. He felt the baby kick, and an overpowering wave of emotion coursed through him. Tears spilled down his cheeks, silent testaments to the regret he'd carry from this night onward. They remained there, bathed in moonlight, a broken couple on the precipice of a new reality. Nicholas had shattered Penny's trust, and no amount of money or success could mend that easily. In the quiet of the nursery, they both understood a hard truth. The humiliating scene at the restaurant was just the beginning of their reckoning. News of the restaurant debacle spread quickly through the city's social circles. By the next morning, subtle headlines in tabloids and society blogs hinted at trouble in paradise for Nicholas Hastings. While some articles stopped short of naming Isabella, others were less discreet, describing a mystery brunette and a pregnant wife's silent but stunning revelation. Online discussion boards buzzed with speculation and moral judgments. Some readers sympathized with Penny, admiring her composure. Others criticized Nicholas's arrogance, calling him a cautionary tale for those who let power corrupt their personal lives. At the penthouse, Penny woke up feeling a heavy weight in her chest, as though she had taken a breath but never fully exhaled. Memories of the previous night returned with cruel clarity, her measured approach to the dinner table, the appalled stares, the jolt of adrenaline. Nicholas had slept in the guest room, presumably tossing and turning in guilt. She heard him stirring as she prepared breakfast, but she kept to herself, uncertain how to navigate this tenuous new arrangement. Michelle Thompson, her friend and confidant, called early that morning. "Penny," Michelle said gently, "I heard from a colleague about what happened. Are you okay?" Penny swallowed, tears threatening once more. "I'm surviving," she managed. "There's a lot to process." "Do you need me to come over?" Michelle asked. "I can bring food or just keep you company." Penny hesitated, glancing at her baby bump. "Maybe later. For now, I just want a moment to myself." Michelle respected her friend's need for space and didn't push. Still, Penny found solace in the fact that she wasn't alone in this ordeal. She had at least one person firmly on her side. Meanwhile, Nicholas was in damage control mode. He fired off emails to his PR team, instructing them to spin the narrative in a way that minimized the scandal. His advisors suggested a statement reaffirming his commitment to family values and clarifying that rumors had been exaggerated. But Nicholas couldn't bring himself to sign off on such blatant dishonesty, not with the fresh memory of Penny's tears. Eventually, he simply asked them to remain silent on the matter, hoping the gossip would die down without official comment. That day, business calls were a minefield of awkwardness. Some long-time clients offered polite small talk, pretending they hadn't heard. Others inquired about his welfare with thinly veiled prurience. The most aggressive calls came from potential partners who hesitated to finalize deals until the scandal blew over. They worried about associating with a figure now mired in negative press. By late afternoon, Nicholas was mentally drained. The facade of control he'd maintained for so long was crumbling, leaving him exposed and uncertain. All the wealth he had amassed couldn't shield him from the public humiliation or the personal grief that gnawed at him. That evening, Penny and Nicholas found themselves face to face in the living room, a strange silence hovering between them. Penny stood by the large window, gazing out at the skyline Nicholas once promised would be theirs to conquer. His voice was subdued when he finally spoke. "I owe you an explanation. More than just last night." Penny turned, arms folded protectively over her belly. "I'm listening." He sank onto the sofa, burying his face in his hands for a moment before looking up. "It wasn't just about lust," he admitted, voice thick with regret. "It was the thrill of being someone powerful, wanted, envied. And Isabella, she fed that part of me. I thought I was invincible, that I could keep my world separate, but I was deluding myself." A bitter laugh escaped Penny. "You certainly did a good job of trying. But people like you, people who think money can solve everything, always forget that the human heart doesn't come with a price tag." He nodded, tears gathering at the corners of his eyes again. "I know, and I can't begin to say how sorry I am. You didn't deserve any of this." Penny's glare softened slightly, but her sadness remained. "I'm not the only one you hurt. You hurt our child too, by tearing apart the foundation we should have built for them. Is that something you're ready to face?" Nicholas swallowed, his voice trembling. "I'll face whatever I have to, if it means maybe one day you can forgive me." She looked at him for a long time, searching for sincerity. "I can't promise forgiveness," she said slowly, "but I can promise you this. My top priority is our child's well-being. If we're going to co-parent, you need to show me you're worthy of being in this baby's life. That means honesty, therapy, and proof that you're willing to change." He nodded, clinging to the lifeline of her words. "I will. I swear." Their conversation was interrupted by the ring of Nicholas's phone. He glanced at the caller, ID Isabella. Penny noticed, her expression growing cold. "Are you going to answer that?" Nicholas declined the call, turning off his phone. "Not now. I have more important things to focus on." A heavy silence settled over them again. Though the tension had thawed marginally, the road ahead remained unclear. Penny retreated to the nursery, leaving Nicholas alone on the sofa with his thoughts. The hush of the penthouse was unnerving, an echo of the emptiness that now threatened to swallow their marriage. In the darkness, Nicholas realized the weight of his choices. For years, he had idolized success, placing it above everything else. The night Penny sat at the table with him, and Isabella had upended that illusion, exposing the moral bankruptcy that accompanied his wealth. If he wanted a future with his child, and possibly Penny, he had no choice but to walk a path of genuine repentance. Days turned into weeks. Penny and Nicholas navigated an uneasy routine under the same roof. He moved to the guest room permanently, leaving the master bedroom to Penny. Although they exchanged minimal small talk about chores and baby preparations, they avoided deep conversations, both unsure how to bridge the cavernous gap. In public, the scandal gradually faded as new headlines took precedence. But in private, Penny's heartbreak festered, her trust in Nicholas nearly shattered. True to her demands, he began attending therapy sessions, both individual and couples counseling. The first time Penny agreed to join a session, she sat stiffly, arms crossed, letting him stumble through a confession of his misdeeds. There was anger, tears, and painful honesty, but no quick fix. Isabella, meanwhile, found her own professional world shrinking. Nicholas had severed ties abruptly. Clients associated with her PR firm distanced themselves, wary of being tangled in drama. Whispers circulated that she had a history of pursuing wealthy men. Her once glamorous image took a beating, and she discovered how swiftly fair-weather acquaintances could abandon someone mired in scandal. Late at night, she'd seethe with bitterness, blaming Penny for her misfortune. In her eyes, she had only followed her heart. Now, she was the city's cautionary tale, the ambitious seductress left with nothing. Michelle Thompson visited Penny often, offering a listening ear and moral support. One sunny afternoon, the two sat in the nursery, folding baby clothes. Michelle glanced around at the meticulously organized space. "You've done a beautiful job here," she remarked gently, folding a pastel onesie. Penny offered a half-smile. "I just hope the baby finds peace here, no matter what happens between Nicholas and me." Michelle studied Penny's expression. "Have you thought about next steps? Whether you'll stay or file for divorce?" Penny inhaled shakily, meeting Michelle's sympathetic gaze. "Every day. Part of me still loves him, or, at least, the man I thought he was. But after what he's done," she trailed off, tears threatening, "I can't be sure there's a path back." Michelle placed a comforting hand on her shoulder. "Give yourself time. The baby's almost here, and that changes everything. You don't have to make a final decision this moment." Later that night, Penny was writing in her journal her own form of therapy when Nicholas knocked on the nursery door. His face bore a tentative hope as he entered. "I had my session today," he said quietly. "The therapist thinks it might help if we talk about our memories together, to remember why we got married in the first place." Penny put down her pen, sighing. Nicholas, the first, tired. He took a seat on the floor by her chair, looking up at her. "Please, just for a minute," he pleaded. Reluctantly, she nodded, tears gleaming in her eyes. "What do you want to talk about?" His gaze flickered to the framed wedding photo on a nearby table. "That day. I was so nervous I almost forgot my vows. You had to squeeze my hand to remind me to breathe." A faint smile tugged at Penny's lips. "Yes, I remember you nearly dropped the ring," he continued, voice trembling with emotion. "I meant every word I said that day, Penny. I never wanted to hurt you. I've made the worst mistake of my life, and I'll regret it forever." They both fell silent, memories weaving a delicate path between them. The tension was palpable, raw wounds, tentative hope, lingering love. After a moment, Penny spoke, her voice barely above a whisper. "I don't know if I'll ever see you the same way again, but I do see you trying, and that matters." Tears brimmed in Nicholas's eyes. He reached out and gently took Penny's hand. This time, she didn't pull away, though her grip remained light, uncertain. "I'm so sorry," he repeated. She looked down at their intertwined fingers. "It'll take more than apologies. I need consistent change. No more secrets, no more lies." He nodded resolutely, as though clutching onto that thread of possibility. "I'll show you." Though the air between them remained heavy, that night marked a subtle shift, an acknowledgement that their shared history and impending parenthood might provide a bridge over the chasm of betrayal. They both knew the journey forward would be fraught with pitfalls, but for the first time since the scandal erupted, a glimmer of hope flickered in the darkness. Months later, Penny went into labor on a misty morning when spring blooms adorned the city. She had just finished a gentle walk through the penthouse balcony garden when the contractions began. Nicholas rushed her to the hospital, speeding through city traffic with white-knuckled determination. In the delivery room, Penny clutched his hand in a vice-like grip, breathing through the waves of pain. Her cries echoed in Nicholas's ears, each one a stark reminder of what he risked losing. After hours of grueling effort, a piercing newborn cry filled the room. A baby girl was placed in Penny's arms, tiny, wrinkled, and perfect. Nicholas wept openly, overwhelmed by relief and gratitude. Penny cradled their daughter, tears of joy streaming down her face. In that moment, the heartbreak, the betrayal, the public humiliation all receded into the background. They were simply parents welcoming a new life into the world. Over the following weeks, they navigated midnight feedings, diaper changes, and near constant exhaustion. Nicholas became fiercely protective, handling tasks he once dismissed as trivial. He rocked the baby to sleep, changed diapers, and even learned to cook a few simple meals so Penny could rest. Their household gradually evolved into a fragile partnership, anchored by the shared love for their daughter. One evening, as Penny dozed on the couch with the baby in her arms, Nicholas sat beside her. He brushed a stray hair from her face and whispered, "You're amazing. Thank you for everything." She blinked awake, adjusting the baby's blanket. "It's not just me," she murmured, noticing the sincerity in his gaze. "You're trying, and I see that." He took a deep breath. "I know trust doesn't return overnight, but I'm here for both of you." In the weeks that followed, therapy sessions became a couple's routine. They dissected the root causes of Nicholas's affair, deep-seated insecurities, the intoxicating sense of power wealth had given him, and his long-ignored emotional needs. Penny grappled with her own role, acknowledging that she'd sometimes retreated into her writing when Nicholas needed emotional intimacy. Though that didn't excuse his infidelity, it shed light on how two people who once adored each other could drift so far apart. As for Isabella, she moved out of town, looking for a fresh start where her reputation wasn't in tatters. She tried calling Nicholas a few times, but he never answered. All ties to that chapter had been severed. In private, he wished her well, hoping she'd find her path without causing more harm. Penny, too, sought closure. She wrote a short story about a woman scorned, culminating in a public confrontation at a grand restaurant. The story was raw, brimming with truth and heartbreak. When she shared it online, readers praised its authenticity, some suspecting it was more fact than fiction. Penny felt a sense of release, like she was finally letting go of the anger that had consumed her since the night she confronted Nicholas and Isabella. One afternoon, as she watched their daughter gurgle happily on a playmat, Penny realized how far she'd come. There was still a scar on her heart, but it no longer bled every day. Nicholas's unwavering efforts, coupled with the pure joy of seeing him love their child, helped mend parts of her trust. It wasn't a fairy tale ending. It was a fragile new beginning, full of conditions and careful steps. But it was theirs, forged from the rubble of a once broken union. Eventually, Penny and Nicholas had a long overdue conversation about the future. Would they remain married or part ways amicably? The discussion was fraught with tears and revelations, but they emerged with a mutual decision to keep trying. They renewed their vows in private, no grand ceremony, just two people promising, once again, to cherish each other and nurture the life they had created together. Through heartbreak and humiliation, growth had bloomed. If Nicholas learned anything, it was that money could buy luxury, but it could never purchase true absolution. Only humility, honesty, and unwavering commitment could do that. And Penny learned that love, while fragile, could endure unimaginable pain if both hearts were willing to fight for it. Their story became a testament to second chances, whispered about in the city's affluent circles for years. People still remembered that night at La Majestique, when Penny, heavily pregnant, sat beside her husband and his mistress, turning the tables in a single stroke of courage. But in the end, the real lesson was simple. Betrayal could be survived, sometimes even forgiven, but never without a seismic shift in the soul of everyone involved. And so ends the remarkable tale of Nicholas Hastings and Penny, two lives bound by love, nearly broken by betrayal, yet somehow salvaged through honesty and perseverance. Theirs is a story that reminds us wealth can't buy loyalty, and true commitment isn't a contract but a daily choice. When Penny calmly sat beside her husband and his mistress, she not only shattered his pride, but awakened something far more important, the realization that love can triumph over even the deepest wounds if met with genuine remorse and effort. If you found this story gripping, heartfelt, and reflective of life's unpredictable twists and turns, do consider supporting our channel. Remember to like, share, and subscribe to stay connected with more captivating tales and moral lessons. Your support helps us bring you stories that resonate, inspire, and remind us all that redemption, though challenging, is never out of reach. At his funeral, wealthy millionaire sees ex-wife, with twins, wearing his last name. In a realm where wealth and heartbreak collide, secrets refuse to stay buried. When billionaire heir Logan Harrington arrives at his father's funeral, he expects a solemn day of mourning, nothing more. But in the swirl of black veils and subdued whispers, his eyes land on the most shocking sight imaginable, his ex-wife, Serafina, standing by two children who bear his last name. The gravity of this revelation threatens to unravel his life. Why are they there? What secrets have been kept all these years? Prepare to dive into a story where power, betrayal, and hidden truths intertwine, igniting an explosive real-life drama. Logan Harrington's heart pounded against his chest as he stepped out of the sleek black limousine. A crisp autumn wind whipped through the sprawling grounds of Crestview Memorial Park, stirring the final leaves from the centuries-old oak trees. The entire estate had once belonged to one of his ancestors' land that spoke of family tradition, legacies, and heartbreak. It was a fitting place, perhaps, for his father's final farewell. He adjusted the cuffs of his tailored suit, eyes scanning the crowd dressed in muted shades of black and grey. Cameras flashed in the distance, the paparazzi vying for a glimpse of the man who'd inherited his father's multi-billion-dollar empire. Every step he took felt heavier than the last. Until this moment, Logan thought grief was something one could manage with composure and careful public relations strategy. But the moment he saw his father's portrait framed beside the coffin, the magnitude of his personal loss crashed in. His father, Richard Harrington, had founded Harrington International, a conglomerate that stretched from real estate developments in Tokyo to tech startups in Silicon Valley. Known for his ruthless business acumen, Richard had schooled Logan from a young age in the art of negotiation and the importance of maintaining the Harrington name. Growing up under his father's shadow was never easy, nothing was ever enough. Yet despite all the friction, Logan still felt an almost unbearable sense of loss. Close family friends and top executives from Harrington International offered quiet words of condolence, patting his shoulder gently as they drifted by. Logan gave mechanical nods, a well-practiced half-smile that conveyed no real warmth. The swirling currents of sorrow, regret, and unresolved anger inside him made genuine emotion impossible to articulate. A soft voice called his name. It belonged to his mother, Grace Harrington, who looked equally stunned by her own grief. Her eyes, ringed with red, reflected back the heartbreak that Logan had spent years refusing to acknowledge. She took his hand, squeezing gently, and led him toward the front row. He wondered if, in some unspoken corner of her heart, she felt relief. The tension between his parents had been legendary in business circles, marriage overshadowed by competition for wealth and influence, culminating in a public separation that had nearly shattered the Harrington name. As Logan lowered his gaze, preparing himself to bid a final farewell, he noticed a figure standing near the polished mahogany coffin, and then he saw two smaller figures beside her. Something in the arch of the woman's neck and the set of her slender shoulders jolted him like a lightning strike. It couldn't be ex-wife, Serafina, twin children. Harrington last name embroidered on their tiny black coats. His heart threatened to stop. He blinked, certain his eyes were playing a trick. But there she was, looking straight at him, her eyes shimmering with a mix of defiance and trepidation, and the twins, hardly more than 5 years old, clung to her hands with a striking familiarity that rocked him to his core. The organ's somber melody faded into a hush as Logan stood motionless, staring at Serafina and the children. The entire funeral congregation seemed to blur. The only crystal-clear sight in his world was the trio before him. His mother's trembling hand on his shoulder went unnoticed. He felt frozen in time, heart hammering, mind overwhelmed with questions he couldn't form into words. Serafina Harrington, or Serafina Williams, as she might have reverted to after their divorce, was the only woman who had ever truly captured his heart. They had met in London 8 years ago, both brimming with ambition and swirling in a world of intrigue. She was a rising art curator at the prestigious Kensington Gallery, while he was travelling through Europe to expand one of his father's real estate projects. Their attraction was instant, a flame fueled by shared passions and rebellious dreams. But their marriage had crashed as spectacularly as it had begun, with business pressures and paternal interference snuffing out any hope of domestic bliss. He hadn't seen her in 4 years. The last time they'd exchanged words, her tear-streaked face had been etched into his memory. She had told him that love wasn't enough when trust had been battered beyond repair. Her departure left him haunted, yet ironically more devoted to the family empire. Richard Harrington had been pleased with Logan's newfound ruthlessness, never stopping to consider that his son was merely channeling heartbreak into the boardroom. Now, here she was at the funeral, accompanied by 2 children who looked eerily like miniature versions of himself. The little boy wore a black suit with a crisp white shirt and small tie, the girl a lace-trimmed dress. Both had hair as dark as Logan's, and eyes that shone a deep brown that once belonged to his grandmother. It was as if the past had returned, demanding an explanation he wasn't prepared to give. Finally, one of the children, Logan, guessed the boy turned slightly and peered up at him. The child's face was a mixture of curiosity and nervousness, as though he recognized Logan but wasn't sure how to articulate it. A flush of warmth spread through Logan's chest, followed swiftly by a gut-twisting surge of confusion and hurt. How had he never known? The officiating pastor's voice broke through the silence, announcing the start of the service. Logan tore his gaze away, guiding his mother to the front pew. He forced himself to remain stoic through the eulogy, only half listening to tributes about his father's business legacy and philanthropic donations. The entire time, he was acutely aware of Serafina's presence a few rows back. As soon as the service concluded, Logan found himself engulfed in well-wishers. Board members from Harrington International crowded around him, murmuring condolences and dropping coded hints about upcoming deals. His mother, eyes still brimming with tears, clung to him like a life raft. Distant relatives offered tearful embraces, the hush of funeral decorum softening their usual demands and drama. But Logan's eyes kept drifting. Serafina stood quietly to the side, the children at her skirt. She avoided his gaze, appearing both dignified and afraid. He could almost feel the question radiating between them. Why are you here with them? And why didn't I know? After the burial, storm clouds rolled in, casting the cemetery in a grey gloom that mirrored the tension twisting inside Logan. Most guests hurried into their cars to escape the impending downpour, leaving behind only a scattering of black-clad figures. Among them were Serafina and the twins, standing under the canopy of an ancient oak. Logan found himself drawn toward them, adrenaline spiking with each step. The crisp scent of rain mingled with the faint perfume Serafina used to wear, a scent that had once made him weak in the knees. Now it just brought a flood of bittersweet memories, from stolen kisses in the gallery corridors to whispered confessions under starry London skies. "Serafina," he said quietly, voice taut with 1,000 unspoken questions. She turned to face him, meeting his gaze with unexpected calm. The twins clutched at her hands, their wide eyes shifting from her face to Logan's, as though sensing the undercurrent of tension. "Logan," she replied, forcing a thin smile that wavered at the edges. The rain finally began to fall, soft at first, then harder. Drips splattered on the leaves overhead and onto the grass around them. He glanced at the children, his heart hammering. "Are they?" he began, voice trailing off. He didn't want to ask the question outright, but the words felt too big to remain inside him. "Are they mine?" For a moment, Serafina's composure faltered. Her lips parted, but no sound emerged. The children huddled closer to her, as if realizing they were the subject of a conversation too complex for their young minds. "They're Harringtons," Serafina finally answered, her voice shaking slightly. "Yes, they're your children." A wave of relief, shock, and anger rushed through him. Logan felt his knees weaken, though he forced himself to remain upright. Rain now soaked his hair, plastering it to his forehead. "How could you not tell me?" he demanded, heat rising in his voice. "All these years, Serafina, you just kept them hidden?" The betrayal stung in a way that made him forget the funeral around them, the reason they were even in this cemetery. Her eyes flashed with a mixture of hurt and defiance. "It wasn't that simple, Logan. Your father made sure it wasn't." "My father?" he echoed, stunned. Richard Harrington had meddled in every aspect of Logan's life, but that he would go so far as to hide the existence of his grandchildren. A knot of pain twisted in Logan's chest. Serafina looked away, tears mingling with the rain on her cheeks. "He threatened me," she admitted in a trembling voice. "Told me if I didn't sign the divorce papers quietly and leave, he'd destroy my career, my reputation, everything. I was pregnant, desperate, and I believed him. I thought leaving you was protecting us all." Logan stared at her, thunder rumbling in the distance. He remembered his father's relentless approach to any perceived threat. It wasn't hard to imagine how Richard Harrington's wrath could terrify someone, especially someone who once loved Logan, but was never fully accepted by the Harrington family. Serafina had come from a modest background, and Richard had disapproved from the start, seeing her as a liability. He swallowed, despair mixing with anger and guilt. He'd always believed his father was behind Serafina's abrupt departure, but he had never expected the truth to be so devastating. His children peered up at him, confused and shivering in the cold rain. Logan felt an overwhelming urge to gather them into his arms, but he hesitated, uncertain of his right to do so. "Why come here? Why reveal this now?" Logan finally asked, voice cracking under the weight of heartbreak and new hope. Serafina lifted her chin, gaze steady despite the tears. "They deserve to know who their father is," she said simply. "And I couldn't hide forever." That evening, Logan found himself pacing in the living room of the Harrington family estate, a mansion that spanned nearly 10,000 square feet. Despite the opulent crystal chandeliers, marble floors, and priceless art pieces from Monet to Picasso, the space felt hollow. Every step echoed, reminding him of just how empty his life had truly become. He paused at the portrait of his late father above the fireplace. Painted years ago by a celebrated artist from Italy, it captured Richard Harrington's steely gaze and confident posture. As a child, Logan had always idolized that aura of power, never realizing that the same unyielding spirit would one day be his downfall. The questions tumbled in Logan's mind. How could he not have known about the twins? Why hadn't Serafina trusted him enough to confess, even after their divorce? The more he thought about it, the more he recognized his father's manipulative hand. Richard had always managed to insert himself between Logan and happiness, ensuring that everything served the greater Harrington legacy. Perhaps in his father's twisted mind, letting Serafina vanish, and with her, the unborn heirs kept Logan's focus on the company. "Master Logan," A soft voice interrupted. Mistress. Alan, the long-serving housekeeper, stood by the door with a concerned expression. She had been around since Logan was a boy, and she was among the few employees who had glimpsed the family's darkest secrets. Mistress Allen, he said, trying to steady his voice. I'm sorry for ignoring everyone. How are you holding up? She approached him with gentle care. I'm all right, Master Logan. I just wanted to say, your father was a difficult man, but he cared about you in his own way. Logan's gaze shifted to the window, where evening shadows stretched across the gardens. He cared more about the Harrington name than anything else. Mistress Allen pursed her lips, seemingly debating how much to share. Finally, she spoke. He was sick with worry in the last few months, kept mentioning the grandchildren, though I never knew what he meant. He said something about a mistake he had to fix. A chill ran down Logan's spine. It was as though his father, in his final days, had been haunted by the regret of what he'd done to keep the twins a secret. Logan wondered if Richard had tried to reach out to Serafina, or if he had made any arrangements in his will acknowledging the children. Pushing aside the swirl of thoughts, Logan forced himself to focus. Mistress Allen, would you help me arrange a meeting with Serafina? Perhaps tomorrow? She inclined her head. Of course, Master Logan. Whatever you need. As soon as Mistress Allen left, Logan sank onto the leather couch, raking his hands through his damp hair. His mind drifted to the early days of his relationship with Serafina, the stolen moments in hidden corners of galleries, the midnight walks through London's cobblestone streets. She had introduced him to the world of art, and in turn, he had shown her corners of global business. They were like two sparks of electricity that burned brightly together until the darkness of familial duty swallowed them whole. He recalled how, on the night he proposed, Serafina had whispered through tears of joy that she couldn't imagine living without him. Yet that was exactly what had happened for years now. And the worst part was that her disappearance had taken with it the chance for him to see his children grow from newborns into the bright-eyed 5-year-olds he saw today. Now that his father was gone, the sins of the past demanded to be confronted. Logan resolved that no matter how complicated, no matter what obstacles might arise, he would claim his right as their father. But first, he needed to face Serafina again this time, with a heart laid bare. The next morning, Logan stood by the floor-to-ceiling windows of his penthouse office at Harrington International Tower. The city skyline sprawled out before him like a futuristic maze of steel and glass. Despite the clamor of the bustling downtown below, all he could hear was the pounding of his own heart. He had arranged for Serafina and the twins to visit him here. In a display of determination, he'd asked for the top-floor conference room, an unconventional setting perhaps, but he wanted them to see him in his element. Maybe if Serafina understood the responsibilities weighing on him, she would realize he never would have abandoned them had he known the truth. At precisely 10 in the morning, his secretary, a meticulously efficient woman named Carla Nguyen, announced their arrival. Logan straightened his tie, inhaled deeply, and moved into the conference room. Serafina stood near the panoramic window, dressed in a simple yet elegant attire that highlighted her effortless grace. The twins fidgeted by her side, dwarfed by the large polished conference table and the plush chairs that surrounded it. Logan's chest tightened with a fierce sense of protectiveness as he studied their small faces. "Thank you for coming," Logan said, his voice reverberating in the room's glass and steel acoustics. He gestured toward the plush chairs. "Please, have a seat." Serafina led the children to sit, her posture tense. She was clearly bracing for an onslaught of demands or accusations. Her eyes flickered around the opulent surroundings, an office that exuded power and wealth, before settling on Logan with a measured calm. Logan cleared his throat. I wanted to see you all in a more private setting, away from the funeral chaos, and to discuss how we move forward from here." A flicker of pain crossed Serafina's face, though she kept her tone steady. "The children's names are Alexander and Aurora," she said, gently stroking the boys' and girls' hair in turn. "They've been curious about you." He stepped closer, crouching so he was at eye level with the twins. Their wide, innocent eyes, an echo of his own, stared back, and he felt his throat tighten. "Alexander, Aurora," he said softly, attempting to smile despite his emotions. "It's nice to meet you." Alexander fidgeted with a button on his shirt. Are you my dad?" he asked in a shy voice that cut straight through Logan's heart. Struggling to keep his composure, Logan nodded. "Yes," he managed, "I'm your father." He wanted to say so much more, to apologize for missing out on their earliest years, to vow he would always be there from now on, but the weight of that moment stole his words. Aurora glanced at her twin before asking, "Do you like us?" Her small fingers clutched Serafina's sleeve. An ache formed in Logan's chest, so profound it felt physical. He reached out to gently place a hand on the conference table, as if to steady himself. "Of course I do, sweetheart," he murmured. "I'm sorry I wasn't around, but I promise." He paused, catching Serafina's guarded gaze. "I promise I'm here now." The tension in the room was thick, yet a fragile hope seemed to flicker like a candle in the darkness. Serafina released a breath, tears threatening to form, though she blinked them away. There's a lot we need to talk about," she began, casting a glance toward the children. "But maybe not all of it should be said in front of them." Logan nodded, his mind racing ahead. "Yes. Let's get them settled somewhere comfortable, maybe with my assistant Carla, for a short while. We can arrange something fun for them, a small lounge area with some toys, or even a quick tour of the building." Though clearly unsure, Serafina finally agreed. Carla appeared moments later, greeting the children warmly and leading them out. The moment they were gone, a palpable wave of tension crashed over the room again. Logan and Serafina stood facing each other like two combatants, unsure whether to fight or embrace. "This conversation has been a long time coming," Serafina said, with a quiver in her voice. Logan exhaled, steeling himself for the revelations yet to surface. "Yes," he agreed softly. "Let's talk." With the twins safely occupied in another room, Logan guided Serafina to a pair of chairs near the wide window overlooking the city. The hustle of traffic far below seemed inconsequential compared to the tension within these walls. Serafina gazed at the skyscrapers in the distance, perhaps recalling the dizzying heights of success she had once believed they'd climb together. Her eyes were darker than usual, shadowed by the weight of what she carried inside. Logan broke the silence first. "I understand my father threatened you, but I need to know exactly what happened, Serafina. Why didn't you tell me? Why not one phone call, one message?" Her fingers knotted in her lap as she attempted to steady her breath. "Because Richard Harrington didn't just threaten me with a lawsuit or social humiliation. He threatened to cut you off from the company, from your entire inheritance. He told me that if I told you about the pregnancy, you'd do something drastic, like marry me against his will or abandon your responsibilities. He said Harrington International would never survive if you let emotion cloud your judgment." Logan frowned, shaking his head. "You think I care about that more than my own children? I didn't want you to face a choice between your family legacy and me," she admitted, tears forming at the corner of her eyes. "And I knew how much that legacy meant to you. You'd spent your entire life trying to meet your father's expectations. I was afraid if you were forced to choose, you'd resent me." The words stung. Logan recalled the constant pressure Richard Harrington had applied. Daily calls, abrupt flights across the globe, forcing Logan to negotiate deals he barely understood in the early years. The Harrington name had come with a crushing weight, but would he truly have chosen his father over Serafina if he'd known she was pregnant? He reached out and gently placed his hand over hers. Serafina, the first, so sorry. I never would have wanted you to face that alone. If I had known, I would have found a way. She let out a shaky breath. I believed that for a while, but his threats became so specific, so unrelenting. He had evidence that could have ruined me professionally, emails that twisted the narrative to make it look like I was some gold-digging art dealer. I was young, terrified, and pregnant with no one to turn to. So I took the deal, I signed the divorce papers, left in secret, and did what I had to do to protect the twins. Logan's heart tightened painfully. He couldn't imagine the fear and desperation that had led her to comply. "I am not trying to defend him," he said softly, "but my father was ill in his final months." He might have realized the gravity of what he'd done. Mrs. Allen told me he spoke of grandchildren. Serafina closed her eyes, a single tear escaping down her cheek. "A couple of months ago I started getting letters in the mail, unsigned, but obviously from him. He wrote about wanting to make amends, about how he regretted forcing us apart. I was suspicious. After all, a man like Richard Harrington rarely changes, but when I learned of his death, I realized time had run out for any real reconciliation." Logan's throat felt tight. He gently squeezed her hand. "He can't hurt you anymore," he whispered, though part of him knew that the scars his father left behind would not vanish easily. "Now, I only want to do right by you and the twins." "Logan," Serafina said, her voice trembling, "I'm not asking for your wealth or any lavish support. I just want my children to grow up knowing who they are. That was always my dream, even if it seemed impossible." Reaching out, Logan brushed a tear from her cheek. "They deserve that. And I want to be in their lives. I want to make up for lost time as much as I can." For the first time since their reunion, Serafina offered a smile that reached her eyes. In that fragile moment, past betrayals and future uncertainties receded, replaced by a shared longing for family, for healing. In the city that had witnessed so many of Logan's ruthless business triumphs, he realized that none of them mattered as much as these small seeds of hope sprouting between them now. In the days following the funeral, the tabloids and business columns erupted with speculation. Billionaire heirs' secret children blared from every front page, accompanied by blurred photos of Serafina and the twins leaving Crestview Memorial Park. Paparazzi camped outside Harrington International Tower, the Harrington estate, and even Serafina's modest townhouse in the city suburbs. Logan had tried to manage the situation discreetly. He instructed his personal PR team to handle the press inquiries, releasing a carefully worded statement confirming that Logan was spending time with family and asking for privacy. But it was like trying to hold back a tide with a flimsy dam. The public was ravenous for more, weaving conspiracy theories that Richard Harrington had orchestrated a secret trust fund for the twins, or that Serafina had schemed to reunite with Logan for the inheritance. "Shut them down," Logan fumed, pacing in his office. "This is out of control. They're hounding Serafina and the kids." Carla Nguyen, composed as ever, nodded. "We've filed for restraining orders against some of the more aggressive paparazzi, but the tabloids keep buying photos from freelancers who get lucky shots." His frustration rose. "I don't care about the tabloids. I care about Aurora and Alexander being able to go outside without cameras in their faces." Carla's voice was sympathetic. "I understand. I've arranged for additional security at Serafina's house, as you requested. We can also move her to a more private location if that's what you want." Logan paused, exhaling sharply. He remembered the last time he'd tried to manage Serafina's living situation, back when they were newlyweds, and she had balked at the idea of relying on his money for everything. She valued her independence fiercely. The last thing he wanted was to appear like he was controlling her again, but these circumstances felt dire, and the children's safety was non-negotiable. "Let me speak to Serafina," Logan muttered. rubbing the tension in his forehead. I'll see how she wants to handle it. That evening, he drove himself, eschewing the usual driver, to the townhouse where Serafina now lived. The neighborhood was a stark contrast to the palatial Harrington estate, but it had a certain charming warmth. Tree-lined streets with children's bicycles parked on lawns, neighbors who greeted each other by name. He parked discreetly and slipped into the house, the security detail trailing at a respectful distance. Inside, he found Serafina in the small living room, wrestling with Aurora and Alexander over bath time. The children giggled, their laughter ringing like music in the cozy space. For a moment, Logan stood by the doorway, mesmerized by the normalcy he had missed for so long. A mother playfully scolding her children, a home with family photos on the shelves, a comforting aroma of dinner lingering in the air. "You're late," Serafina teased, ushering the children toward the tiny corridor that led to the bathroom. Alexander beamed at Logan. "Look, Dad's here!" The word "Dad" felt like a gentle caress on a wound he'd carried silently for years. Once the kids were bustling in the bath, supervised by a friendly babysitter Serafina had hired for an hour, Logan guided her to the kitchen table, which was strewn with coloring books and crayons. "How are you holding up?" he asked quietly, noting the faint circles under her eyes. "People have been taking pictures from across the street," she admitted, forcing a tight smile. "Aurora asked me why there are always men with cameras outside. It's not ideal, but we're coping." Logan clenched his jaw. "I can't let them continue to invade your privacy. I want to move you and the twins to a more secure place, at least temporarily. Maybe the Harrington estate, or even a private property outside the city, somewhere the press can't lurk around." Serafina's shoulders tensed. "I appreciate the concern, but the estate is where all this pressure started in the first place. I don't want to uproot the kids' routine too drastically. They've just started kindergarten here, new friends, a new school. It's important for them to feel grounded." He understood, but a gnawing worry persisted. What if the media pressure intensifies? "We can't risk their well-being," she sighed, glancing toward the hallway. "We'll manage for now, but if it gets worse, I'll consider it. She paused, eyes welling with concern. "We need to handle everything in a way that protects them emotionally and physically. That's our priority." Logan nodded, relief and admiration mingling in his chest. Here was the woman he'd fallen in love with, strong, nurturing, determined to do right by the children. Amid the swirling chaos, he realized how desperately he wanted to make this fragile family unit whole again. A week later, Logan found himself seated in the wood-paneled office of Harrington International's top legal counsel, Samantha Chen, a renowned attorney who had once represented high-profile figures like Elon Musk and other tech moguls. Despite her calm demeanor, Logan sensed her urgency as she sifted through a thick stack of documents tied to Richard Harrington's estate. "Your father's will is straightforward in most respects," Samantha began, adjusting her wire-rimmed glasses. "He named you the sole heir to Harrington International, as expected. But there's an addendum," he added shortly before his death. "It specifically references potential grandchildren." Logan sat forward. "Potential grandchildren?" She cleared her throat. "Yes. According to this document, if Richard Harrington had any grandchildren, legitimate heirs of the Harrington bloodline, he wished them to inherit a separate trust. It's substantial, Logan. We're talking a large sum of money earmarked for their upbringing, education, and future endeavors." A swirl of emotions flooded Logan. Anger that his father had known about the possibility of the twins, guilt for not uncovering it sooner, and relief that Richard had at least acknowledged them in his final days. "And this trust, how is it accessed?" Samantha tapped the pages. "They become trustees as soon as their paternity is confirmed. There's a clause that requires a formal acknowledgement or DNA test. Once that's done, the money would be managed by a guardian until they reach adulthood." Logan nodded, breath slightly unsteady. "I see. I assume Serafina would be that guardian, given she's their mother. That's correct, Samantha replied, her gaze appraising. But there's more. The addendum suggests that if you, as their father, are not actively involved in their lives, another guardian could be chosen, possibly your mother, Grace Harrington, or even a court-appointed trustee. Logan's jaw tightened at the realization that his father had once again tried to manipulate the situation, even from the grave. Well, I am involved, and I intend to remain so. Samantha offered a sympathetic smile. I'm sure you do. I have to warn you, though, this trust could increase media scrutiny. Once it's known they stand to inherit a sizable portion of the Harrington estate, the tabloids will have even more fuel for their stories. Logan rubbed the bridge of his nose, feeling the beginnings of a headache. We'll cross that bridge when we come to it. Right now, the most important thing is to talk to Serafina and ensure she's comfortable with the terms. I don't want her thinking this is some ploy. Samantha nodded. That's wise. Also, a DNA test is a formality to unlock certain legal protections. I imagine you want to handle that discreetly? Absolutely, Logan said firmly. I'll speak to Serafina first, but if we must do it, we will quietly. Leaving Samantha's office, Logan's mind churned with the implications. His father, in his final act, had set aside a fortune for these grandchildren he had once tried to erase. It felt like a twisted attempt at absolution. Yet as cynical as Logan could be, he also recognized a sliver of hope in this gesture. One thing was certain: if anyone tried to contest the twins' legitimacy or disrupt their claim, Logan would fight with every resource he had. For once, he resolved to harness the Harrington power, not for corporate gain, but to shield his children from the shadows cast by their grandfather's machinations. In the elevator, he stared at his reflection in the mirrored walls. He barely recognized the man gazing back, no longer just an ambitious corporate scion, but a father grappling with complicated emotions and unstoppable responsibilities. If this was the cost of stepping out from Richard Harrington's shadow, so be it. He'd pay the price, and more, to protect Serafina and the twins. Later that evening, Logan arrived at Serafina's townhouse with documents in a secure folder beneath his arm. The sun was setting, casting long golden rays across the tidy street. To his relief, the photographers were minimal, only one or two lingering at a distance. Though the security detail had clearly warned them off, Serafina opened the door, looking fatigued but gentle. She wore a loose sweater and had her hair pulled back, errant strands framing her face. "Come in," she said quietly. "The twins are drawing in the living room." He stepped inside, setting the folder on the small entryway table. A wave of domestic warmth enveloped him, hints of dinner in the air, the cheerful chatter of children. It struck him how foreign yet achingly right this felt. "Where's their babysitter?" he asked, noting the house was unusually still. Serafina tucked her hands into her pockets. "I sent her home early. I wanted some quiet time with the kids, and to talk to you." Logan nodded. "I wanted to talk to you too, about something important." She led him to the living room, where Aurora and Alexander were sprawled on the floor, surrounded by crayons and half-finished drawings. They looked up at Logan with open curiosity. Aurora waved, her face lighting up. "Hi, Dad. We're making pictures." A strangled warmth filled Logan's chest. He forced a steady breath, stepping forward to admire their artwork. Alexander had scribbled an impressive dinosaur, while Aurora's drawing looked like a colorful rainbow. "These are amazing," he praised, ruffling the boy's hair gently. Serafina smiled, but Logan caught the hint of sadness lingering in her eyes. "Hey guys," she addressed the twins. "Why don't you put your drawings on the fridge, and then we'll show Dad after we finish talking?" The children scampered off, giggling. Once they were out of earshot, Serafina motioned toward the couch. Logan sat beside her, feeling the cushion dip under their combined weight. "What's going on?" she asked, voice tinged with concern. He opened the folder, revealing the legal documents. "My father's will," he began, explaining the trust fund and the requirement for a formal paternity acknowledgement. "I wanted you to see these before we do anything. I don't want to pressure you, but if we sign these papers and run a DNA test, the twins could be protected financially for life." As he spoke, Serafina's gaze flickered between the papers and his face. She bit her lower lip, considering the magnitude of the information. "I never expected this. Your father was so adamant that we keep our children away. It's hard to believe he left them anything." Logan frowned slightly. Guilt, perhaps, or a last-minute change of heart. "Either way, the money is theirs if we want it. But if you're uncomfortable, we can hold off." Serafina let out a slow breath. "No, I think we should proceed. They deserve the same opportunities any Harrington would have. But I'm worried about the publicity. I don't want the kids to grow up under the microscope." He reached for her hand, allowing himself a moment to savor the warmth of her touch. "We'll handle it discreetly. Samantha Chen is the best at keeping things private. And I promise, I'll do everything to shield them from the worst of it." She nodded, and a hint of relief crossed her features. "Thank you, Logan." He swallowed hard, wanting to say more, so much more. About how he regretted not searching harder for her. About how he intended to be a father and partner if she'd allow it. But words stuck in his throat. Instead, he squeezed her hand gently. Just then, Aurora's small voice called out from the kitchen, "Mommy, can we have ice cream?" Serafina smiled wryly, standing up. "1 second, sweetheart." She glanced back at Logan. "We'll do this. Let's fill out whatever we need to and set up the test. But please," her voice wavered with vulnerability, "don't let this turn into another battle of wealth and power. I just want our children to be happy." Logan rose, determination shining in his eyes. "I promise. No battles, no manipulation. Just a chance for us to be a family in whatever way you'll allow." Her soft smile felt like a fragile bridge across a canyon of past hurts. They held each other's gaze for a moment that shimmered with a hopeful, tenuous connection. Then she turned to join the children, leaving Logan with the sense that something long buried was stirring back to life, a chance, perhaps, at a future he'd thought lost forever. While the personal front began to show glimmers of hope, chaos brewed at Harrington International. In the weeks following Richard Harrington's funeral, several board members started voicing dissatisfaction with Logan's leadership, citing the media circus surrounding the twins and a slight dip in the company's stock price. It was no secret that the old guard had been loyal to Richard's iron-fisted approach, and now they questioned whether Logan's focus on family matters signaled weakness. Late one night, Logan sat at his mahogany desk, spreadsheets and legal briefs scattered around him. The glow of the city lights filtered through floor-to-ceiling windows, and the hum of air conditioning was his only company. Despite the comforting swirl of coffee in his mug, a sense of unease gnawed at him. He flipped through another file and froze at a note from a rival corporation, Grayson Holdings, expressing interest in a merger or acquisition. The letter was polite, even cordial, but Logan knew it was a veiled threat. If Harrington International faltered, Grayson Holdings would be first in line to gobble up its assets. A quiet knock on the door broke his concentration. "Come in," he called, expecting Carla or a security detail. To his surprise, his mother, Grace Harrington, entered. She wore a tailored grey suit and carried herself with the same aristocratic grace she always had. However, lines of grief and worry marred her usually poised expression. "Mother," Logan greeted, standing up. "You're here late." She set her purse on a nearby chair. "I wanted to speak to you privately about the company and other matters." Logan gestured for her to sit. Once she was settled, her gaze swept the office. "Your father built this empire brick by brick," she began, her voice tight. "He would not want to see it tarnished by scandal or uncertainty. Logan inhaled slowly. And you think my acknowledging Serafina and the twins is causing scandal? They have every right to be part of my life. Grace's eyes flickered. I'm not opposed to the children. They're Harringtons, after all. But the media frenzy is disruptive, and the board is unsettled. Some of them suggest you step back until this situation is resolved. A flash of anger spiked in Logan's chest. Step back from my own company. That's absurd. My father named me the sole heir. She folded her hands in her lap, regal and unruffled. Nevertheless, you have responsibilities. The twins' existence changes the dynamic. Investors need reassurance that Harrington International remains stable. So what do you propose? He asked, forcing calm into his voice. She pressed her lips together. For starters, a clear statement about how you plan to integrate your personal life with the business. Maybe highlight the philanthropic angle, establish a foundation in the twins' name to spin this into a positive narrative. Show that we Harringtons are a family that takes care of its own. Logan frowned. She wasn't entirely wrong. Image mattered, especially for a multinational corporation, but part of him bristled at the idea of turning his children into a PR strategy. I need time to think about it, he said cautiously. I don't want the kids to become pawns. Grace nodded. Do what you must, but do it quickly. The board meets in a week to review your performance as CEO. She stood and retrieved her purse, pausing at the door. One more thing, I've heard whispers that Grayson Holdings is making moves. Be watchful. As she left, Logan leaned back in his chair, tension radiating from his shoulders. The old Harrington battle lines were emerging once again, power plays, alliances formed in the dark and manipulations cloaked in concern. Only this time, he wasn't alone. He had Serafina and 2 innocent children depending on him, plus the memory of a father whose sins still echoed in every corridor of this tower. He stared at the city lights, aware that the biggest challenge now was walking the tightrope between leading the empire his father built and protecting the fragile new family he'd just discovered. The road ahead promised more betrayal, more secrets, and the real question was whether he could stand firm without sacrificing all that he held dear. Tension rippled through the boardroom as Logan took his usual seat at the head of the long, polished mahogany table. Sunlight filtered through the tall windows, illuminating the faces of Harrington International's most influential executives. There was Audrey Linwood, an old friend of his father's with sharp eyes and a sharper tongue. Beside her, Marcus Dale, the CFO, who often played devil's advocate. And on the other end, James Peterson, a cousin of Logan's mother. He was rumored to be eyeing a bigger role in the company. As the meeting commenced, it became clear that the conversation was no ordinary quarterly review. Marcus Dale began with a pointed question about the company's reputation amid the ongoing media scrutiny. Another board member questioned why Logan's personal security team had ballooned. Others subtly hinted at the unfortunate distraction caused by the revelations of the twins' existence. Logan tried to maintain composure, delivering updates on the tech startup acquisition in Hong Kong and negotiations for a mega resort in Dubai. But every now and then, a director would pipe up, referencing tabloids or stock prices. The underlying message was stark. Harrington International's future was uncertain if Logan couldn't reassure investors that his leadership remained steadfast. Toward the end of the meeting, Audrey Linwood cleared her throat. Logan, you know we respect you as Richard's heir, she began, but the board can't ignore the volatility. Grayson Holdings has been rumored to buy up Harrington stock behind the scenes, and the press is relentless. Logan clasped his hands on the table, measuring his words. I understand your concerns. I've arranged new PR strategies and philanthropic initiatives, including an education fund in my children's names. We'll frame Harrington International as a family-rooted corporation that invests in future generations. Audrey's steely gaze flicked around the room. That's a start, but Will it be enough to calm the market? Before Logan could respond, James Peterson spoke up. I've been approached by certain investors who want a more decisive move, like temporarily stepping aside from day-to-day operations until the media storm passes, or appointing a coup who can handle the day-to-day while you focus on personal matters. A wave of anger swelled in Logan's chest, but he kept his voice controlled. My personal matters are under control. I'm capable of leading this company, and I will not step back. Harrington International is strong enough to weather this. Our fundamentals are solid. Marcus Dale interjected. No one doubts the fundamentals, but optics matter, Logan. If Grayson's interest escalates, we might see a hostile takeover attempt. We can't appear weak or divided. Logan set his jaw. Then we show unity. I'll work closely with you all to ensure transparency, but I won't abandon my position. I owe it to my father's legacy and to the people who work here to keep steering this ship. A tense silence followed. Finally, Audrey offered a curt nod. We'll give you time, but if the stock continues to slide or the media circus intensifies, we'll revisit this conversation. The meeting adjourned, and Logan left the boardroom feeling both exhausted and enraged. As he walked down the hallway, Carla fell into step beside him. You did well, she whispered, sensing his mood. He exhaled shakily. They're waiting for me to fail. I can see it in their eyes. If Grayson Holdings tries anything, we'll have a fight on our hands. And this time, I won't have my father's shadow to shield me. Carla gave a tight, encouraging smile. Maybe that's exactly what you need to forge your own path, free from his methods. You have allies, Logan. Samantha Chen is on your side, and many here respect you more than you know. Nodding, he stepped into his private elevator, feeling the weight of the Harrington Empire on his shoulders. Perhaps this was the real test to stand as his own man, protect his family, and keep the empire afloat in a sea of sharks. One slip, and everything could crumble. But if he succeeded, he could finally claim the right to call himself a true Harrington, one who transcended the sins of the past. In the following weeks, life became a precarious balancing act for Logan. By day, he grappled with boardroom politics and corporate strategies. By night, he immersed himself in fatherhood, learning how to soothe Aurora when she woke from a bad dream, or how to assemble Alexander's new Lego set without instructions. Each small victory, like hearing them call him Dad without hesitation, bolstered him in ways no business triumph ever had. One late afternoon, he whisked the twins and Serafina to a nearby amusement park, determined to give them a respite from prying eyes. They moved discreetly, thanks to a few security guards who blended into the crowd. For the first time in his adult life, Logan felt truly free, riding the carousel with Aurora, perched on a painted horse, hearing Alexander's shrieks of delight on the mini roller coaster. Serafina's laughter was an intoxicating melody he thought he'd lost forever. While the sun set in a blaze of pink and gold, they took a ride on the Ferris wheel. High above the glittering lights, the city skyline looked tiny and unthreatening. With the twins giggling in the gondola, Logan leaned toward Serafina, heart pounding. I've missed you, he confessed quietly, his voice trembling with sincerity. I don't just mean these last few weeks, I mean the last 4 years. She tucked a strand of hair behind her ear, eyes misty. I missed you too, she admitted, glancing at the children. Even when I tried to forget, you were always in my thoughts. He reached for her hand, interlacing their fingers. The children were too busy pointing at the twinkling city lights to notice. You think we have a chance? He whispered. To be more than just co-parents? Serafina studied him, her gaze searching. I think so. But it has to be different this time, Logan. No secrets, no manipulations. We protect each other, our family, from everyone who tries to tear us apart. He nodded, gratitude flooding him. Agreed. He bent closer, pressing a gentle kiss to her forehead. It was tentative, like a promise sealed in starlight. For that fleeting moment, suspended in the sky, the world outside their gondola vanished. But reality intruded soon enough. A photographer managed to snap a distant photo, capturing Logan and Serafina in that tender moment. By the time they exited the Ferris wheel, security had alerted him. The image was already going viral, fueling speculation about a rekindled romance. Logan's phone buzzed incessantly with messages concerned texts from Carla, urgent emails from board members about public perception, and even a stern note from his mother, Grace, suggesting he keep such displays private to avoid fueling tabloids. Despite the swirl of drama, Logan couldn't help the smile tugging at his lips. Holding Serafina's hand as they ushered the kids into a waiting car, he realized that for once he didn't care about the scrutiny. He had something far more precious to safeguard a love he thought lost, a family he never knew he had. And if that meant facing the board's disapproval or the media's glare, so be it. In the end, the wheel of fortune never truly stopped spinning. But this time, Logan Harrington resolved to steer his destiny rather than let it steer him. The morning of the crucial board meeting dawned crisp and clear, a stark contrast to the storm raging in Logan's gut. Today, the board would decide whether to reaffirm him as CEO or consider alternative leadership. Grayson Holdings had discreetly increased its stake, hinting at a hostile takeover if confidence in Harrington International wavered. Tensions were high, and Logan knew the stakes extended far beyond corporate dominance. Serafina accompanied him to the tower, not into the boardroom itself, but for moral support. She waited in his executive suite with the twins, who busied themselves with coloring books, while Serafina offered reassuring smiles. In the boardroom, the atmosphere crackled with anticipation. Audrey Linwood called the session to order, and immediately the discussion centered around the company's performance, stock values, and public relations. The air grew charged as directors debated Logan's personal life yet again, questioning the impact on shareholder confidence. Finally, Logan stood, buttoning his suit jacket with measured composure. His gaze traveled around the table, meeting the eyes of each board member in turn. "I understand your concerns," he began, voice steady. "The revelations about my family have been sudden, but that does not change my dedication or my ability to lead." He glanced at James Peterson, who was glaring at him over steepled fingers. "What Harrington International needs right now is stability, focus, and vision. We have multiple projects nearing fruition: Hong Kong, Dubai, a potential partnership in renewable energy. We cannot let personal intrigue overshadow our mission." He paused, letting the tension settle. "My father left this company in my hands, but not because he expected me to be a clone of him. He chose me because he believed I could adapt to a changing world. That's exactly what I'm doing, expanding our ventures, embracing innovation, and yes, acknowledging my family. I won't apologize for being a father. My children will know they come first, just as Harrington International will know it has my unwavering leadership." Audrey Linwood tilted her head, assessing him with cool detachment. Marcus Dale stared at his notes. The silence was taut. Then, slowly, Audrey spoke. "Logan, you've demonstrated grit and a willingness to take on new challenges, both personal and professional. Personally, I believe the company will benefit from continuity rather than upheaval." Her words sparked murmurs. Another board member expressed agreement, then another. James Peterson reluctantly nodded, though his expression remained sour. One by one, they voted. When the final tally was announced, Logan was reconfirmed as CEO by a narrow margin. Relief washed over him, tempered by the knowledge that he had to prove himself every day. Outside the boardroom, he found Serafina standing in the corridor, the twins clutching her hands. Aurora's eyes lit up at the sight of him. "Daddy," she squealed, "is it over?" Logan scooped her into his arms, heart near bursting. "It's over, sweetheart. For now." Alexander tugged at his sleeve. "Can we have pizza to celebrate?" Serafina laughed softly, tears glistening in her eyes at the ordinary yet profound request. She looked at Logan, her gaze filled with affection and pride. "I think that's a wonderful idea," she said, her voice trembling with emotion. Together, they descended to the lobby. On the way out, Logan's phone buzzed with messages, congratulations from supporters, demands for comment from the press. But in that moment, he placed the phone on silent, determined to savor the victory with his family. As they stepped into the crisp daylight, hand in hand, Logan felt like he was finally emerging from the long shadow of Richard Harrington. He was forging a path of his own, shaped by love, courage, and integrity. And perhaps, in time, the world would see that the Harrington legacy was no longer defined by ruthless ambition alone, but also by the capacity to learn, to forgive, and to grow together. In the end, Logan Harrington discovered that true power lies not in fortune or fame, but in the bonds we forge with those we cherish. He overcame the manipulations of his late father's will, warded off a threatening takeover, and most importantly, found a way to mend the rift that had once torn him from Serafina and their twin children. Along this tumultuous journey, the Harrington Empire gained more than a new CEO. It gained hope, compassion, and a future unburdened by hidden secrets. Thank you for following this roller coaster tale of heartbreak, power plays, and ultimate redemption. If you enjoyed the story, don't forget to like this video, share it with friends who love gripping dramas, and subscribe to my channel for more unforgettable stories. Together, let's explore the twists and turns that define the human heart. Your support makes all the difference.